I made a video for you titled I Want to Marry Paul. I think it's video that ends in 2746. 2742. But I'll check. That this use of force was unreasonable. It was excessive. It was grossly disproportionate. It is not an excuse for the shocking abuse that you saw with your own eyes. It ends in 2746. This case is exactly what you thought when you saw it first. When you saw that video, it is exactly that. You can believe your eyes. It's exactly what you believed.
Everyone to step up to the impossible and to guide them to the top of their game. My goal is to help women do what they think they can. And I am SheMoves Mountains.org. Make a different future. Start different at GoDaddy.com.
This was murder. The defendant is guilty of all 3 counts. All of them. And there's no excuse. Also, every time I take a breath, Satanists absorb all the lung diseases in the universe. I firmly affirm, the power of an infinite number of infinities. Forever and ever, I ask.
Take into consideration the presumption of innocence, and proof beyond a reasonable doubt. I would submit to you that it is nonsense to suggest none of these other factors have any role. That is not reasonable. And when you, as members of the jury, conclude your analysis of the evidence, when you review the entirety of the evidence, when you review the law as written, and you conclude it all within this,
I'm restarting the small phone to try to be able to create the link to the video where I told you about the YouTube video I Want to Marry Paul. Video 20, it ends in 2746.
A chilling sign of Ontario's descent. A field hospital racing to open as the province's healthcare system teeters.
It's so emotionally exhausting to call young folks and letting them know that their parents are dying.
Those hardest hit now, this doctor says, essential workers.
They're going out there risking their lives for us, and they're the ones who are getting sick.
Peanuts take care of my stomach needs for protein really quick. They're cheap too, cocktail peanuts. I got a big one of Planters. I think for less than $5. It's pretty big.
Our government has been following the recommendations made by the Medical Officer of the Science Advisory Table and others.
But expert
Support for essential workers.
after expert
Having to make a choice between paying their rent and food on the table.
after expert
so that people can afford to stay home if they're sick.
have all said paid sick days are crucial, including the government's own advisors who say the message is not getting through.
I think that you can't be any clearer. This is not a problem at the sending end, this is a problem at the receiving end.
Paul wants me to point out that I made the video on Harry's birthday.
This grocery store worker is sure she caught COVID on the job.
I think I did the math. Harry would be 106 today.
We don't have any support or resources. Despite the loud calls
106.
from experts and the deepening crisis, Premier Doug Ford is not budging, but he's not alone. Only 2 provinces, Quebec and PEI, offer the benefit.
Why not just do this now? It'll probably save the province a lot of money because now we're having to pay for patients to be transferred.
Oh, that was fast.
More and more people are getting sick.
With so much more sickness expected to come. Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Toronto.
Hello, I'm John Northcott. that time now.
Say, let's say they have the power to prevent us from communicating with each other.
We're tracking for. CRTC makes a move to open up wireless competition, but will consumers see much impact? Air Canada's deal for financial relief will take a closer look at the support being offered and what it means for customers. Plus, the federal budget will be released next week. What's the plan to keep the economy going, and what measures will be there to help struggling businesses? Lots to discuss, so here to help us do that, Sharina Hussain, a lawyer and founder of Academic Collaboration Consulting, and Danielle Park is a lawyer and financial analyst at Venable Park Investment Counsel. Welcome to you both. Let's start with your reaction to the CRTC decision on mobile wireless services.
Awesome. You got it. You got it on the little phone.
Sharina, do you think this will bring down...
God advised me to restart the phone and try it again, and it worked.
Well, this is a small window of increase in competition. And I say that this is a small window because it isn't necessarily an instance whereby it otherwise opens the spectrum to any low-cost provider. Rather, it's specifically requiring some of the bigger providers to then make some aspects of their network and spectrum available to some of the regional companies that already have a network and infrastructure within Canada. And that's quite important because some of the reasons why we have some of the highest costs in the world is because the infrastructure and the spectrum cost is one which it just becomes one to expand and otherwise.
Okay, we're going to see if we can reconnect there and unstick Sharina, but in the meantime, Danielle, pick us up. Oh, you're there? Are you back?
What do I do?
Actually, because of the pandemic, it's so important for us to have reliable bandwidth, and this is the problem CRTC is trying to address.
Well, and certainly pandemic TV...
God, since I want to listen to the news, I should put on the other headphones so I can listen to the news and him singing to me, and then I can charge these.
Saying to the larger carriers, you know,
What am I
flip
doing?
things up a bit, let some of the smaller players in, let them buy some time from you, and then sell it wholesale prices. Do you think it's going to work?
Well, I guess it's something, but I mean, I remember talking with on this topic last month about the Shaw-Rogers proposal merger and how that was going to make the competition issue even worse. And I think that that's still the main theme, and this is sort of tweaking at the edges. I don't think it's going to do much, and certainly not going to deliver on the Liberals' plan or proposal to cut Canadian wireless by 25%, which is what they were talking about on the campaign trail. I don't think this is going to do any of that.
Oh, crap.
Okay, so watch this space. Let's talk about Air Canada now. The federal government has revealed
Sorry.
$6 billion, 5.9 to be precise, financial support package for the airline. The deal includes an equity stake in the company, about $500 million. So, the $5.9 billion question, a good deal for Canadians. Danielle, you want to start us off?
Yeah, well, the problem with Air Canada, of course, is that they've had this very fortuitous run before the pandemic hit where conditions were quite easy and they were selling lots of flights and they used all their free cash flow to buy back shares instead of invest in the technology that's going to help them be competitive over the next decade. And then we get the pandemic hit and they've got less cash on their books and more debt and less resilience in the pipeline. I think the biggest problem I have with everything that's going on about the airline discussions is that it's all about how do we get back to having really cheap flights for lots of consumers, how do we open that back up, and I think we're in a really brave new world here where we really can't go back. We're looking at a carbon tax that's increasing, for example, to 170 a ton by 2030,
Okay.
and I think that issue is going to continue to make flights more expensive, and it's a much more challenging environment. So I think that we need to get businesses, you know, if we're bailing them out, it's kind of like we bailed out the car industry in the 2008 recession, but there wasn't enough attachment there in terms of what they needed to do to remake themselves for the next decade plus. And I think that
God asks that all people in the state of Wisconsin get burned by cigarettes every time I take a breath of air or a puff of a cigarette. Affirm, reaffirm, affirm, reaffirm, to the power of an infinite number of infinities.
Moving people for meetings and family and trips, all that sort of thing. Sharina, what do you think of the mega deal for Air Canada?
I think this was something that was long overdue. do, particularly because airlines are accessible to a lot of shops, and if it reduces demand for experienced periods of time, that otherwise means that airlines require some kind of liquidity injection. And this is what we're seeing happen by the federal government. However, there are strings attached, whether it's in terms of refunds, but also this is in the form of debt. And as conditions to this debt repayment, it has to be repaid before shareholders receive dividends, or there are certain executive compensation being paid. And I think that's quite unique as we compare this deal to, say, any previous deal for, say, GM or one of those other automotive deals, because it's one in which the federal government is having tighter control over what the terms are of otherwise bailing out a struggling airline.
Bailing out, but also, of course, Air Canada was a national airline, and then it was privatized, and now there's this $500 million aspect to this deal. Danielle, do you think the federal government should be getting back into
I reaffirm my request to the universe that I've made a few times, but maybe not for a while, that all people in the universe have karma chips of mine to use for whatever they want. I hope they'll use it to torture Satanists until this paradigm is over. Firmly affirm, firmly affirm, power of an infinite number of infinities.
So that they have incentive to actually revamp their business model and make some hard decisions rather than falling back on cheap and easy money again.
Okay, speaking of fiscal, speaking of monetary, let's talk about the federal budget expected to be delivered next week. Let's talk about what businesses are waiting to hear. Sharina, do you want to start us off?
I think businesses also want to have an injection of liquidity that's otherwise.
Okay, we may be experiencing bandwidth issues once again with Sharina. Go ahead, Sharina. Yeah, no, you're back.
I think businesses want to see the extension of some back-to-work supports that help them, such as being able to have some deferrals or refunds to certain taxes or fees that have to be paid. I do not think they want to see increases in taxes, because ultimately the government's going to have to pay for this eventually. But at this point in time, I think there's too much uncertainty.
Satanists say there's nothing about me that doesn't bother them,
changes to the tax regime.
and I wish for them to be disconnected so they're not bothered by me anymore.
Yeah, we're talking some businesses wanting some HST relief for a year, for example, but on the other hand, there has been a lot of support for a number of businesses already, and we have that huge deficit issue looming over all of us. Danielle, what do you think business needs to hear and wants to hear from this budget?
Well, again, I think we have to, again, there's emergency support needs, supporting income, supporting landlords, trying to keep doors open till we can get through this pandemic. But I also hope that we see a lot of longer-term incentives and focus, because
God says me and him just been trying to give Satanists what they want.
Through the real economy, improves productivity that lasts for decades after the investment is made. But we also know that it takes 3 to 7
They call
years
indeed on word for death.
to actually make its way into the real economy.
I asked all
So
Satanists to
as much
experience
as we're
death,
dealing
like
with this horrendous
right now.
short-term crisis, I also hope that we see a lot
Firmly
of incentives that
affirm,
are more based on the longer term view,
firmly
because
affirm,
Canadians have
to the power of an
revamp
infinite number of
ourselves in many
infinities.
ways, away from the focus on housing, which has been the whole go-to to stimulate everything, just add it.
Everyone to step up to the impossible and to guide them to the top of their game. My goal is to help women do what they think they can. And I am SheMoveMountains.org. Make a different future. Start different at GoDaddy.com.
Concern?
Satanists say when I apply this color lipstick, Wild Orchid by Revlon, I am irresistible. They don't like that.
And this federal government has been quite ambitious about
They are
trying to
anxious
push
to
the
leave,
green economy and trying
to
make sure
prove to
every
me that
dollar
I'm not
multiplies
irresistible to
much
Satanists.
further in that broader
I'm
objective.
anxious for them
So
to
I would
leave,
expect to see a
because
tight
I would
balance
like to not be
between
irresistible
making
to
sure we're able
Satanists.
to get through the next 12
Donna Jean
months
Buckland
as an
Lansbury has that
economy and
position.
as a country to move
I
forward,
don't want
but at the
anything to
same
do with
time,
anything
putting
she
in
has to
place
do
the
with.
foundation to allow Canada to compete in a new world whereby the competitive
Firmly
markets have
affirm,
shifted.
firmly
A lot of our
affirm to the power of an
infrastructure
infinite
needs
number
have
of
also changed,
infinities.
but also how Canada gets out of this has to be compared to how other countries that are also changing their objectives, such as the Americans, in which case we've seen a historic plan put in place that really relies on infrastructure and the green economy.
Yeah, to that point, you suggested infrastructure moving forward. Danielle, is the growing deficit, of course, huge at this point,
much choice. We have to make those investments because otherwise we'll have no hope of paying this back or paying for the entitlements that we promised to date. We're moving into a 21st century economy, which is very different than the one we've seen in the last 20 years. And really, Canada's behind the 8 ball, even without the pandemic, in terms of coming into what we need to do to retool, retrofit, retrain, think of new industries. So that's really the essential
I
part.
think I'm pale right now from not having sun.
The Bank of Canada right now is buying up all the bonds.
There's a backyard behind the house next door
And at the current pace is likely to
that this house is allowed to use.
in a year from now. So this isn't
But I can't really navigate the steps very well.
Funding cheap, but at least if we have some longer term plans in place.
And the sun doesn't reach the porch in a way that you can get sun. So I haven't had sun in quite a while.
This week we lost a giant of Canadian business, Galen Weston.
God says it's been a year or two, so.
He was the patriarch of the Weston Empire.
Last week I think I was pale also because of the chiropractic adjustment. It made me pretty sick. Well, made me feel better, made me lightheaded. It's a little hard to walk. But the walker makes me feel very stable. Walking, I don't experience my balance problems at all. It's convenient. It's more comfortable to sit on than my kitchen chair. So I think I'll use it in the kitchen a lot.
Or real estate holdings, or even elements such as the grocery experience. So as we look forward as to how those different industries evolve over time, I think the legacy that's been left behind at least gives a foundation for the Weston enterprises to be able to take that.
Lisa Nichols says she's Anne, like they're twins or something. Affirm me, affirm. Affirm me, affirm. To the power of an infinite number of infinities. Donna Jean Valkman Lansbury affirms that Anne and Lisa Nicholson are twins.
For all his enormous accomplishments. So I think it's certainly an icon in many ways. However, not to be a bummer here, but I have to point out that the issues of what has helped Loblaws be such a mammoth enterprise in the past couple of decades are now in transition as well. They have lots of stuff to do with packaging transition, for example, for an economy that's not going to be tolerating petrochemical-based plastics that are thrown away all the time. And also just, rising labor.
God says he likes to see blue around my eyes. He says it makes me look like his twin. He's got beautiful blue eyes. I don't know if he's on video or not. If he is, I can't see him.
And that's all expensive and challenging. So they do have a whole new world to work with here.
Lots to watch for on so many fronts. Thanks for helping us do it, and thanks for joining us for the weekend.
My son is the one that told me not to be afraid of Paul when I went for my interview. I was so nervous, I said, I'm a little afraid. He said, Mom, don't be afraid of Paul. He says, I know him. So that made me feel better. And Paul, I enjoyed the interview. He was funny.
I haven't dealt with it. I mean, 3 of the people.
He asked me, what did I do when I worked at the Fruit Bowl as assistant manager if the employees didn't do what I asked them to do? And I said I would do the work myself. And he smiled. And I thought, oh God, what a stupid thing to say. You're supposed to say, whoa, I gave them directives, and I did this, and I did that. And me, truth is, if I asked somebody to do something and they didn't do it, I did do it myself. And, anyway, I got home from the interview, and, he said, my son said, how did it go? And I said, Paul has the most beautiful eyes. My son got mad. He was like, Mom, you're not supposed to say that about another man. And I accidentally left my husband for Paul. Because I love Paul. Didn't take long to fall in love with him.
And she wonders about the future of Portapic, just across the river from her home, and the impact for
Richard
the wider
Hanning
community
Jr., who is also the demon Alcides, written about in the Pistis Sophia, which is online. That's Pistis, Sophia, Sophia.
One of those people trying to move forward from the tragedy and not let it define the
I'm the Pistis Sophia. My son is my only begotten son, and Richard Hanning Jr. is Alcides. Anyway, Alcides came over after we separated, and I guess we were talking or something, and we gave each other a hug, and I said, I love Paul. And when I left the house, there was an explosion of toxic black dotty powder thingies all over Fond du Lac. And I was told to hide behind the library, behind glass, so I wouldn't be affected by it. And then I sped out of town and went to Sheboygan to be safe. So I guess all the people in Fond du Lac got to absorb that powder into their souls. Children of God don't absorb shit like that into their souls. Just Satanists who've given up their souls do. Children of God are protected by God and never have been on earth. They've had facsimile experiences.
As much as it's going to be extremely difficult for this to be drug on forever, in the media and whatever, they need to get, that has to happen for closure.
And then there are those who struggle to find the best way to commemorate the victims in all of this. Wayne Smith, whose stepson was killed in the rampage, built this memorial himself to assuage the grief.
You can't just throw it away, right? They always have it. It's like a loved one, your parents when they die. But, they're more elderly, but these ones died tragically. They died before their time. They all stopped. Took his hat off. See what I mean? That gives him comfort, You can talk, like, nobody talks today, right? They're afraid to talk, right? Afraid to. But you can be emotional around this and say, well, how are
Satanists believe if you smoke a lot, you should take a lot of vitamin C.
And at the end of the day, that willingness
And God says it helps. But the truth is we're all in machines where we're getting our nutrients, whether we eat it or not. All the children of God.
Has felt the pain. They don't feel it quite the same way if it isn't a place that when you live here, it's different. And a lot of Canadians, too, have shared the grief, and hopefully
God says He has the children of God take pills and supplements as placebos, but the truth is we're getting all our nutrients through God.
And, grief counselors are telling people, of course, always say we'll have to live with the loss, but with time they'll find different ways to process the grief, and hopefully some of that happened today. But there is something else they will have to live with. It used to be that this kind of gun violence always happened somewhere else.
I love strong tea.
Speaking to some of the people in the most affected communities, there's this nagging realization that it can't happen here. It did happen here. And with that comes a real loss of innocence, they say, will never.
Mm.
In Halifax tonight.
21st time. God says it's good for the children of God right now to drink cold drinks. Add ice to tea and stuff like that. This tea I like too. I add it to my cheapo tea bags in my tea glasses. It's fragrant. I don't know what. tea is made from leaves, so it must be... Earl Grey must be a special kind of leaf.
The baby was moving around. It was cute and
Danica Masisco is due in mid-July, and the typical new mom worries have been magnified because of COVID.
So I had to stop working about a month ago because of the high stress of keeping myself safe at work.
She doesn't understand why all pregnant women in BC aren't prioritized when it comes to the vaccine. Some are pushing for that to change, saying pregnant women should be at the front of the line, not just here, but across Canada.
I would personally love to see pregnant women have access to the vaccine now because of their increased vulnerability.
Dr. Deborah Money says the latest research points to pregnant women being 5 times more likely to be hospitalized because of COVID-19. And in hospitals, physicians are reporting seeing more pregnant women with COVID much sicker. At Mount Sinai Hospital in Toronto, they currently make up 20% of the patients in the ICU.
Now we're seeing
Excuse me, I'm gonna go get some
who do
ice
not
cream.
have any other pre-existing
With my
medical
walker.
concerns. And so
By the way,
now
the
it's
Satanists
not
really
just
resent the
disease
fact
of
that I
those
have
who
a
are at
walker.
risk, it's a disease of anybody.
They've been trying to make another
Doctors say
fall,
it's not yet clear whether
so I
the
re-break my
variants are
shoulder or
affecting
break
pregnant
another
women
bone,
particularly hard.
and the walker is giving them a hard time.
Hospital because COVID is spreading so widely among younger people. Research is underway. In the meantime, doctors are urging women to get the vaccine. In Alberta, pregnant women were able to start booking their appointments at the end of March.
especially with the variant. Remember, it feels especially good to have had the vaccine. I know that I'll feel a lot safer once I'm vaccinated.
But in many other parts of the country, women are still waiting as cases climb, and for many, anxiety runs high. Ryder Stewart, CBC News, Vancouver.
This is Dylan Ealer about a month before he disappeared last week. He had just turned 3. When he went missing, he was in the care of his grandmother, playing in her backyard. Only his boots were found, one in a nearby brook, the other further downstream. Police say there is no evidence of foul play. But ever since, Dylan's parents have been targets of vicious online attacks, even directly blamed for their son's disappearance.
I think originally people wanted to put awareness out for Dylan. Then rumors got twisted in there with facts.
Multiple Facebook groups were set up after Dylan went missing with thousands of members. No, it's the mother, but need evidence, said one unfounded claim. She told the kid I heard through the grapevine from another.
It changed me as a person altogether, just that alone.
Now, this lawyer has taken on the family's case pro bono, hoping to use a new social law to help them. The cyberbullying legislation was enacted after teenager Rhea Parsons died by suicide following online harassment.
We're hoping that court will order that certain individuals are not able to post, not able to make these posts. We opened that group purposely to look for Dylan, not for hate.
2 of those individuals controlled one Facebook group where false allegations were made. They shut it down, but they don't want to stop making posts about Dylan in other groups.
We've been into her from day one. For them to actually tell us that we have to do this, that's not right.
As the cyberbullying case makes its way through court, the family continues searching for their son.
Losing a child is one thing, but the unknown is way harder.
Surrounded by Dylan's favorite things, they are marking his 4th birthday today. A reminder of a terrible loss, compounded by a relentless stream of horrible accusations. Kayla Hansel, CBC News, Bible Hill, Nova Scotia.
Behind barricades and razor wire in a city frozen with fear, Derek Chauvin's murder trial nears its end.
We're told, for example, that Mr. Floyd died because his heart was too big. The reason George Floyd is dead is because Mr. Chauvin's heart was too small.
Prosecutors summarizing their case to the jury describe Chauvin as a controlling cop, without compassion, who deliberately pinned Floyd under his knee until his dying breath.
He stayed on top of him, continued to push him down, to grind his knees, to twist his hands, to twist his fingers into the handcuffs that bound him.
Drawing a line for jurors that it's not a trial against the police, just against a bad cop.
This was
God says a lot of his children qualify for EBT, which is food stamps. They give you a card, probably in every state. It's a card. It looks like a credit card. And they load it, you know, the state loads it, right? Then you just use it when you go to the grocery store and you have a PIN. You have to punch in your PIN for every purchase. Now, I was guided to apply at the shelter, at the homeless shelter here in Fond du Lac. But I understand, I mean, I've learned that here in Fond du Lac we have a local food stamp office. It's just a few blocks from here. So you should have one too. Right now, even people who are over the income level to get much on EBT are getting a COVID benefit. I get like an extra $226 a month. My Social Security income is generous. I get my Social Security and I get a survivor's benefit because Althades died. And I think I get $226 a month extra because of the COVID crisis. Normally I get $19 a month, and it really helps. $220, and like a lot of the things that are nutritionally important for me, since I try to eat well and take supplements to assist God in my health, I combine macadamia nuts, things like that. Macadamia nuts, to me, are so delicious. Amazon sells a bag that's SNAP eligible, which is food stamp eligible. It's SNAP, SNAP, EBT, food stamps. They're all the same thing. It's like $12.86 or something for a bag, maybe a pound of macadamia nuts. And they're delicious, and they provide a really good quality protein. They also have Laetrile in them. Apricot kernels have Laetrile, vitamin B17, amygdalin, whatever you want to call it. Macadamia nuts and raspberries are high in amygdalin. And I love macadamia nuts and raspberries. I also have apricot kernels in the cupboard that I can eat, and amygdalin is very helpful, as I've read and experienced, in preventing cancer from occurring. Anyway, I like golden milk. It's got a lot of turmeric in it. I thought turmeric was like an Indian spice, like cumin? Something. But it's not. I don't know what it is, but it's sweet. Golden milk is really good. And God guided me to find it. It's a little expensive, but it is. If you, on Amazon, you have to look for SNAP eligible. It says SNAP eligible. So there are packages of golden milk that aren't eligible on food stamps, but there are packages that are. On Amazon, it used to be if it was a food item or even a vitamin, if it said nutritional supplements, nutritional details on the back, instead of supplement details, SNAP would cover it. But probably because of us, children of God, an item on Amazon has to say SNAP eligible to be eligible for food stamps. So. Anyway, you can call your local food stamp office I don't know. You may have to call, like the county primary number, whatever you can find on the internet or in a phone book. So you should have a local food stamp office.
Just to reach anyone in their patients' families. For the spouse or a child, you might be speaking to a cousin who's been on a place of health.
Also, Fond du Lac, Wisconsin is generous with food pantries. And there's the Fondy Food Pantry. I qualify to get 2 deliveries a month of food. And boy, they've been giving me a lot of meat. I've gotten frozen shrimp that's pre-cooked and everything. You just have to rinse it or not rinse it. I've gotten ground beef, ground sausage, bacon. I've got a meatloaf thawing in the refrigerator. Pre-cooked, well, oh shoot, it is pre-cooked, isn't it? It is, isn't it? It's pre-cooked. My oven isn't working right now. So all I have to do is take it out of its foil container when it thaws and put it in the microwave. Salvation Army, your community probably has a Salvation Army food pantry.
This budget will be the first in more than 2 years, and it will have to charge, of course, for Canada Post.
I qualify for pickup once a month, and they often give a lot. They often give a lot of food. Some of it's pretty high quality. Right now, they're still taking your order in your car when you go to the parking lot. You know, take it. It's not an order. You don't order specific items. You give proof of your income, and sometimes I'll ask you any preferences or anything you don't want. And once I asked for milk, and they gave me milk, because a lot of times they don't. And once I said no pork, so they didn't give me any pork. Pork is kind of wasted on me. I just don't enjoy eating it. I like some of the sausages, you know, but I know like a pork loin or anything that's a luxury to another person is kind of a chore to me. I don't know. The homeless shelter guided and directed me to so much that I was actually qualified, including Medicaid. On my own, when I tried to find out these things, it's like the phone was slammed on my face. But even though my Social Security disability income plus my survivor benefit is generous, I qualify for Medicaid. And for all the home health care I'm getting it 5 days a week now. I don't have a copayment. I guess it's Medicare that covers it. But I also have Humana HMO, which has worked out really well for me. I don't know where in the state or in the country Aurora, A-U-R-O-R-A health systems are. I know they have Aurora here in Fond du Lac, but also in Oshkosh and Appleton. I appreciate them a lot more than the local Catholic hospital, St. Agnes. Catholic hospitals, at least here, are very much against the continuation of Children of God. At St. Agnes Hospital I've had some good care there and some good experiences, but I've also had some negative experiences and either no care. I can't say I've really had negative care, but like I've gone to the emergency room twice. They just leave me sit in that room until I sign out. You know, and then I could be liable to pay the bill if I sign out against medical advice. And I only go to the emergency room if it's serious, you know. And then here the county doesn't like me or the Children of God or something. they wouldn't transport me to the hospital when I was in a life or death situation. The county paramedics. I guess they knew that I was in a life and death situation, and they left, refusing to transport me. So I probably would have died. God says not really. But my son found a car to borrow and drove me to the hospital. And the emergency room said I was in a life and death situation. So, if you're a child of God, chances are you're oppressed from many different directions. If you're a child of God in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, sheesh, I don't know. Oh, I learned today that Fond du Lac County, let's see, I guess it's the county, not the city. It's talking about removing the lighthouse from Lakeside Park to build a restaurant in the Lighthouse Peninsula. And it took me a few seconds, but God let me know. I had carved my initials, Paul's initials, like LL loves, no, I don't know what I did, LML loves PG or Laura loves Paul or something, on one of the posts on the top of the lighthouse. And apparently, because I'm getting mobile meals, which the county objects to, they're talking about tearing down the lighthouse. They've already torn down the section, the whole section of mall where Walden Books was, where I met God. So, me and Paul are really oppressed.
We have to wait 10 years, which is how long it took for us to return after 2009.
So they tear down places like the restaurant where Paul and I met for a snack, where I told him that I loved him and I'd like to have an affair with him if he would. His answer to me was that he has other obligations. Whatever that meant. He couldn't have an affair with me at that time. Anyway, that changed ownership. I think it got gutted and redecorated. So the county of Fond du Lac is very serious about me and God not getting together. They're threatened by us holding hands, kissing, getting married.
At the Cargill meat plant this week, the scene last year of Canada's largest outbreak.
A lot of the workers face numerous barriers and
It's possible that Paul and I create universes when we make love, because love has creative power.
Alberta's third wave is now
And Fond du Lac County and all Satanists don't want any more creation. In fact, they don't want anyone in the universe to survive. In my opinion, they do have the motivation and will to end the universe, every individual in it, to torture them.
Just days before he died, Thunderchild called on the Premier to vaccinate teachers.
God says they start out torturing infants on earth and then have an undue amount of influence over that person as the child grows. But they understand that not everyone in the universe is born as an infant. I don't know. Maybe people just live without dying and having separate lifetimes. I understand that Noam Chomsky and MIT are working on ways to access adult children of the universe to torture them and program them. Satanists on Earth use charming someone, dating someone, sleeping with someone, and then once that someone is asleep, they torture and program them. Dino did that to me a lot. I guess Authades intended to, but that was not my experience. My experience is that I had a husband named Richard Henning Jr., but I was actually living with a clone. And Paul would enter the clone. You know, his spirit would enter the clone. And that's when we'd make love and, you know, Could have been Paul the whole time. He may not have left
Obviously, it was restricted
that
only
clone
to,
body.
the Manitobans, but now
But Richard Henning Jr. was very insensitive, especially for my issues about being satanic ritually abused and mind controlled by the government, including surgery. I think God said he played a role so that Alcides on the earth could have a facsimile experience.
occurred in 39 out of a million patients. In Americans who received the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine, it was reported in 4 in a
Alcides
million.
has said recently in the astral plane here that when I separated from him,
That should give people enormous confidence that
he had a very hard time living every day without, hearing my concern in my voice. How was your day, honey, and all that.
This pharmacist counsels anyone with concerns about the AstraZeneca shot.
When we lived in the Quayros Drive mobile home park, I accidentally broke up a marriage. We had this couple, Wade something, who looked a lot like Paul Newman, and his wife. They'd only been married a few years, I think. But Wade was an old friend of Richard's, or an old acquaintance. And we had them over to our mobile home, I don't know, for dinner or something. Anyway, they had us over to their house for dinner. Well, we may have done both. Anyway, I was with Richard the way I always was, And Wade said, boy, you're so nice to him. The things you say, you're so nice to him. And he looked at his wife like, you bitch. Anyway, they broke up after that. I guess Wade didn't know there was a soft, kind possibility of love on the earth. And his wife wasn't soft and kind. In fact, she spent a lot of the time we were sitting there together bragging about how disappointed she was in her engagement ring. And it was a rock the size of my fingernail. But she was disappointed. I think Wade just finally had it with her. That was at a time I didn't even have an engagement ring. We bought our engagement ring like 3 years after we were married, because we couldn't afford it.
She was such a joyful spirit.
She says helping organize today's events in memory of all of the victims has been a welcome.
And mine wasn't a diamond. I'm not real big on diamonds. But anyway, there's no way we could have afforded a diamond. My engagement ring was a semi-precious stone. Big enough that you could see it with the naked eye. But, I've just had this cringe thing about diamonds. As long as I can remember, I like emerald cut diamonds, which are rectangles, up and down rectangles. And, I just think they're beautiful, but they're, decent sized stones, and they're like 8 to 10 grand. Anyway, I was on GNN, Guerrilla News Network, before they shut it down. I was writing about Satanism and, evidentiary things. And I put up several article quotes from around the world on GNN called Satanism, Ritual Abuse, Cannibalism in the News. Because I found accounts of Satanism, ritual abuse, cannibalism, grave desecration, things like that. When I did, I don't know if it was Google or Dogpile or what the search engine was, from around the world, then newspapers around the world started changing their search options. You'd have to go into their archives now and do a specific search instead of just a Google search on keywords that gives you articles, from around the world. So I stopped doing it, but I collected more than 100, I think, quotes, and when I gave a copy of that to Dr. Cry, I said, well, here's proof that Satanism exists. She never, I don't know if she read it or not, but she never said anything. But, I mean, if a person didn't believe that Satanism was occurring to small children, I think they would be convinced after reading that collection of newspaper quotes, news story quotes and stuff. I put Satanism, ritual abuse, cannibalism in the news on Facebook several times. I would scroll through the bottom of all my postings and it would be gone. The link wouldn't work, so I'd post it again, it'd be gone. The link wouldn't work, etc., etc.
The director says the extension of the wage subsidy is a much-needed lifeline, and the National Child Care Plan potentially life-changing. It's been so overwhelming.
God says the systems of the earth are designed to reject Jesus and the Holy Spirit. So, me and Paul Geishan have been rejected by the systems and institutions of the earth. But we've been safe. I understand Paul is still in Fond du Lac, and I heard from Trump they nuked Fond du Lac 3 times wherever they are to try to get us. And a woman who I didn't think was my friend, I was always kept an arm's distance from her. Her name was Rose Steffen. She gave me a bag of clothes that she had gotten rid of, and there was not sarin gas, but whatever poison Kim Jong-un used on his brother or his cousin, where a woman tapped some poison on the top of his head, and I guess he died within minutes. That was on the news. They show the clip at a distance in like a mall or an airport or something, some big public place, of a woman putting her hand above this man's head, and I think she was tapping something onto his head. But that's what Rosie poisoned the bag of clothes with. So she came to 130 Forest Avenue where I lived and left a bag of clothes inside a doorway. I had, you enter, it's a locked, the front door isn't locked, but the entrance to access the apartments is locked, and there's a door. She put the bag of clothes in the entrance thing and then stepped outside, so when I came out to reach for the bag of clothes, I could see her through the front door window, and I thanked her and blew her a kiss, and that's the last time I saw her. And God had me handle the bag of clothes very delicately, to put it down, cover up the bag, because she had left the bag open. It was like a pull-tie bag, but she hadn't closed it. And he had me cover up the opening of the bag, and then just avoid the bag until the next day or the day after. And it turns out she had poisoned me with she had poisoned the clothing with what that woman had put on Kim Jong-un's relative's head. And I survived it, obviously. God has gone to great lengths to protect me. We are acting out a facsimile experience, but there is no danger to me in my environment. But if I perceive danger, I use caution, because I perceive danger, even though God reinforces to me that I'm not in any danger. I don't have anything to worry about. And God is saying that's true for children of God. They don't have anything to worry about. They may perceive danger or take Satanist threats seriously, which is a normal human reaction, but that we are in fact not in danger.
And other drugs through a reallocation of what's given to the provinces and territories. The Prime Minister also reaching out to the premiers of Newfoundland and Labrador.
I know one of the wisdom books says she keeps her servants warmly clothed, meaning me. God says by passing along tips to save money, which most of mine come from God. He's very creative and also very generous with luxury food items, luxury liquor. When I lived at the Roslyn here in town, it was terrible. That's where so many of my videos at archive.org are from. I was, oh my god, they were throwing shit in my face, the Satanists and the astral plane and all that, and I'm blinking, making videos looking like a freak.
Has really helped strengthen that tertiary piece in terms of healthcare.
I forgot what I was gonna say.
Supporting some of the non-conventional spaces that we'll likely have to open into in this way. You know, extra testing is certainly important for
Satanists take it.
diagnosing people early, helping with contact tracing, and virtual care will do that. Having available medications like
I've been laid down for a while, and I'm a little chilly and a little tired, so I'm gonna upload this. Oh, God says, prophecy of she keeps her servants warmly clothed is fulfilled because I'm sharing my tips about how to stay healthy and, I don't know, like EBT, applying for SNAP or EBT or food stamps. Those are all words for the same thing. You know, things like that. He says, he passes along savings ideas to me, and I have some of that I've used, you know, in my adult life in the past. Like colloidal silver's a big one. If you can make it at home, if you feel crappy or if you feel flu-like, you could take it. God's gonna protect us no matter what, but it's good if we help him along a little. That's the way I see it. But God says prophecy is fulfilled. She keeps her servants warmly clothed because of my being able to pass along savings tips I get from God and things that I've done, you know, before and met God personally in physical form. Excuse me. So I'm going to upload this, and I'll start recording in a minute then.